A truck driver stole a Mafia load. One decision changed his life forever. Chapter 1. The rain fell like judgment over the empty stretch of Interstate 40, somewhere between Amarillo and Oklahoma City. Marcus Cole gripped the steering wheel of his 18-wheeler, knuckles pale against the worn leather, watching the wipers fight a losing battle against the downpour. He was 42 years old, and everything he owned fit inside a duffel bag on the passenger seat. 3 months behind on child support, 2 months behind on the loan for this very truck. One daughter who barely remembered his face. The radio crackled with static, and Marcus switched it off, preferring the rhythm of rain against metal to the noise of a world that had stopped listening to men like him. He had driven these roads for 18 years, hauling everything from frozen beef to furniture, from California to Maine and back again. He knew every truck stop, every way station, every stretch of highway where the cops liked to hide. But tonight something felt different. The job had come through Danny Esperanza, a dispatcher Marcus had known since the early days. Good money, Danny had said. Real good money. Just pick up a sealed container from a warehouse outside Albuquerque. Deliver it to a private address in Memphis. No questions. No paperwork beyond the basics. $15,000 cash, half up front. Marcus had taken the envelope without counting the bills. He needed the money too badly to count, too badly to question, too badly to think about why anyone would pay that much for a simple cross-state haul. Now 6 hours into the drive, with nothing but darkness and rain and the hum of his engine, Marcus Cole was beginning to think. The warehouse had been too clean, too empty. The men who loaded the container moved with military precision, not a word spoken between them. They wore expensive watches, the kind that cost more than Marcus made in a year, and they looked at him the way predators look at prey they have already decided to spare. But he had taken the money. He had signed the papers. He had driven away. A sign emerged from the darkness. Rest area 2 miles. Marcus checked his mirrors out of habit, saw nothing but black road behind him, and made a decision that would change everything. He pulled off the highway. The rest area was deserted, just a few sodium lights casting orange pools across cracked asphalt. Marcus killed the engine and sat in the sudden silence, listening to rain hammer the roof of his cab. His stomach churned with something worse than hunger. He needed to know what he was carrying. The walk to the back of his trailer felt like the longest of his life. Rain soaked through his jacket in seconds, plastering his graying hair to his skull. He fumbled with the lock, hands shaking from cold or fear or both, until finally the mechanism clicked open. Marcus pulled back the doors. The container was there, as expected. Steel gray, industrial, unremarkable. But the lock on it was different from any he had seen before. Digital, expensive. The kind of lock you put on something you absolutely did not want opened. He should have closed the doors right then. He should have driven to Memphis, collected his money, and never looked back. That was what a smart man would have done. But Marcus Cole had stopped feeling smart a long time ago. The lock took him 20 minutes to defeat. He used tools from his kit, techniques learned from years of dealing with jammed cargo doors and frozen mechanisms. When the final tumbler clicked, Marcus felt no triumph, only dread. Inside the container, stacked in neat rows, were packages wrapped in black plastic. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, each one roughly the size of a brick. Marcus did not need to open one to know what they contained. He stepped back, rain streaming down his face, mind racing through impossible calculations. This much product on the street was worth millions, maybe tens of millions, and he had just driven it halfway across the country. The sound of tires on wet pavement made him freeze. Headlights appeared at the rest area entrance, cutting through the rain like searchlights. One vehicle, then another, then a third. They moved slowly, deliberately, spreading out to block any exit. Marcus closed his eyes and thought of his daughter, Emily, 14 years old now. She had her mother's eyes and his stubborn streak. He had not seen her in 8 months. The first car stopped 20 feet away. The door opened and a man stepped out into the rain. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Marcus's truck. His face was calm, almost pleasant, like a businessman arriving for a meeting. The man walked toward Marcus with the unhurried confidence of someone who knew exactly how this encounter would end. Marcus considered running. He considered fighting. He considered the small revolver hidden beneath his driver's seat, a weapon he had never fired outside a range. Instead, he stood still and waited. The man stopped 3 feet away and looked at Marcus with eyes the color of winter ice, eyes that had seen terrible things, eyes that had done worse. When he spoke, his voice was surprisingly soft. "Marcus Cole, The man pronounced the name like a verdict. "You have something that belongs to me." Marcus found his voice, though it came out rough and broken. "I did not know. I swear to God I did not know what was in there." The man tilted his head slightly, rain running down his features without seeming to touch him. "Of course you did not. That is why you are still breathing." From the other vehicles, more men emerged. 6 in total, forming a loose semicircle around Marcus and his truck. None of them drew weapons. None of them needed to. The man in the suit studied Marcus for a long moment, something calculating behind those cold eyes. Then he smiled, and the expression was worse than any threat. "I have a problem, Marcus Cole, and I am beginning to think you might be the solution." Before Marcus could respond, the man turned and walked back toward his car. Over his shoulder he called, "Follow us, and Marcus, do not make me regret giving you this chance." Marcus stood in the rain, watching the vehicles arrange themselves into a convoy. He thought about everything he had lost: his marriage, his home, his relationship with his daughter, his sense of himself as a good man. Then he climbed back into his truck, started the engine, and followed the convoy into the darkness. He did not know it yet, but Marcus Cole had just met Vincent Moretti, the most powerful crime boss on the eastern seaboard. And the decision he made in that rain-soaked rest area, the decision to look inside a container he should have left sealed, would lead him down a road from which there was no return. But it would also lead him somewhere he never expected. It would lead him home. The convoy drove through the night, leaving the highway for increasingly narrow roads that wound through sleeping towns and empty farmland. Marcus kept his eyes on the taillights ahead, hands steady on the wheel, mind churning with fear and calculation. 3 hours passed before they finally stopped. The estate emerged from the darkness like something from another century. Stone walls surrounded acres of manicured grounds. Iron gates swung open at their approach, revealing a tree-lined drive that led to a mansion that seemed to glow against the night sky. Marcus had delivered cargo to wealthy clients before. He had seen big houses, expensive cars, the trappings of success that always felt slightly unreal to someone who grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Cincinnati. This was different. This was power made visible. The convoy stopped in front of the main entrance, and Marcus killed his engine. Through his windshield, he watched Vincent Moretti step out of the lead vehicle and walk toward the mansion's front door without looking back. A knock on Marcus's window made him jump. One of the men from the convoy stood outside, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. He gestured for Marcus to lower the window. "Mr. Moretti will see you inside. Leave the truck here." Marcus hesitated. "My cargo," the man almost smiled, "is no longer your concern. Come." The interior of the mansion was warm and silent, all polished wood and soft lighting. Marcus followed his escort through halls lined with paintings that probably belonged in museums, past rooms filled with furniture that whispered of old money and older secrets. They stopped before a set of double doors. The escort knocked once, then pushed them open. The study beyond was enormous, lined floor to ceiling with books that looked actually read rather than merely displayed. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace, large enough to stand in. And there, behind a desk that seemed carved from a single piece of dark wood, sat Vincent Moretti. He had removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. Without the formality of his suit, he looked somehow more dangerous, not less, like a weapon that had been unsheathed. "Sit," Moretti said, gesturing to a leather chair facing the desk. Marcus sat. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Moretti studied a folder open before him, occasionally turning pages, his expression unreadable. Marcus studied the room, noting the lack of family photographs, the absence of any personal touches beyond the books. Finally, Moretti closed the folder and looked up. Marcus Cole, 42 years old, former Army honorable discharge, married once, divorced 5 years ago. One daughter, Emily, currently residing with her mother in Columbus. You have been driving trucks for 18 years, never had a serious violation, never caused an accident. You are in significant debt, mostly medical bills from your father's illness 3 years ago. He paused. You visit his grave every year on his birthday, November 14th. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. How do you know all that? I know everything about everyone who touches my business, Marcus, even accidentally. Moretti leaned back in his chair. The question is, what do I do with that knowledge? The fire crackled. Rain tapped against tall windows. Marcus forced himself to breathe. I can give the money back. Every cent. I will forget I ever saw that container. Moretti laughed, a short sound without humor. The money is irrelevant. The cargo is irrelevant. What matters is that you opened something you should not have opened. You know something you should not know. Normally, that knowledge would be fatal. Normally. Moretti stood and walked to the window, looking out at the rain-swept grounds. I find myself in an unusual situation. Marcus, I have a shipment that needs to move quietly and quickly through territories where my usual methods would attract attention. I need someone who knows the roads, someone who can drive without raising suspicion, someone who has no connection to my organization. Marcus understood. You want me to work for you. I want you to do one job, successfully complete it, and your debts disappear, all of them. Your daughter's college education paid for, your record clean. Moretti turned from the window, and his eyes held something that might have been respect. Fail, and we never have this conversation, and if I refuse? The silence answered that question clearly enough. Marcus thought of Emily, 14 years old, deserving of a father who could look her in the eye, deserving of opportunities he had never been able to provide. He thought of his father, dead 3 years now, who had worked 2 jobs his entire life and died in a hospital bed that cost more per night than he had made in a week. He thought of himself, standing at a crossroads he had never expected to reach. What is the job? Moretti smiled. That was the question he had been waiting for. Before we discuss details, Moretti said, returning to his desk, I need you to understand something. I am not a good man. I have done things that would keep you awake at night. I have built an empire on foundations that polite society would call criminal. He paused, and something shifted in his expression. But I am also not the monster you imagine. I have rules. I have limits. There are things I will not touch, lines I will not cross, and I protect what is mine with everything I have. Marcus found his voice. Why are you telling me this? Because you will have to trust me, Marcus Cole. And trust requires understanding. Moretti opened a drawer and withdrew a map, spreading it across the desk. The job I need you to do is dangerous. Not because of what you will carry, but because of who wants to stop it. He pointed to a route traced in red across the map, running from Tennessee to upstate New York. There is a man named Salvatore Ferrara. He controls distribution in the Northeast, and he has decided that I have become too powerful. He is trying to strangle my supply lines, intercept my shipments, turn my allies against me. He paused. 3 weeks ago, he murdered 4 of my drivers. Good men, men with families. Marcus felt cold despite the fire. And you want me to drive into that? I want you to drive through it. Ferrara is watching every truck connected to my organization. But you, Marcus, you are invisible. An independent driver hauling what appears to be legitimate cargo. He will never see you coming. The fire crackled. Rain intensified against the windows. You are asking me to risk my life, Marcus said slowly. I am asking you to change it. Moretti met his eyes, and there was no deception there. Only brutal honesty. One successful run and you walk away with enough money to start over. Your daughter will never have to struggle the way you did, the way your father did. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. This stranger, this criminal, had reached into the most painful corners of his life and offered something Marcus had never dared to hope for. A way out. He should have said no. A smart man would have found some way to refuse, to escape this room and this house and this impossible situation. But Marcus Cole had stopped being a smart man the moment he opened that container. When do I start? Moretti nodded as if he had never doubted the answer. Tomorrow. Marcus did not sleep that night. A guest room had been prepared for him, elegant and comfortable, but he lay awake until dawn, staring at a ceiling that had probably cost more to decorate than his entire apartment. He thought about the path that had led him here, every choice, every failure, every moment he had let someone else decide his fate. The army had given him structure. Leaving had taken it away. Marriage had given him purpose. Divorce had hollowed him out. Fatherhood had given him hope. Distance had stolen it. And now, here he was, in the house of a man who ran an empire built on shadows, preparing to risk everything on a single drive. The irony was not lost on him, but as the first grey light of dawn crept through the windows, Marcus felt something he had not felt in years. Purpose. He was not just a driver anymore. He was not just a failure, a debtor, an absent father. He was someone who had been given a chance, however dangerous, to change the story. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel. Stories like these, stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary choices, are what we share here every week. If you believe that everyone deserves a second chance, hit that subscribe button and join this journey with us. Chapter 2. The morning came wrapped in mist, softening the edges of the Moretti estate until it looked almost dreamlike. Marcus stood at the window of his borrowed room, watching groundskeepers move through the gardens with quiet efficiency. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. The woman who entered was not what he expected. Small, dark-haired, with eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She carried a tray with coffee and what smelled like fresh breakfast. "Mr. Moretti thought you might be hungry." She set the tray on a table near the window, then turned to face him. "I am Lucia. I manage the household." Marcus nodded, unsure how to respond. The domesticity of the moment felt surreal against the memory of last night. Lucia studied him with an expression he could not read. "You are not like the others." "The others?" "The men who work for Mr. Moretti. They are hard, confident." She paused. "You look like a man who is trying to remember who he used to be." The observation cut deeper than she could have known. After breakfast, Marcus was escorted to a garage that housed more vehicles than he could count. Mechanics moved among them, checking engines, changing tires, loading equipment. At the center of the activity stood Vincent Moretti, now dressed in casual clothes that somehow made him look more approachable. "Marcus," he gestured to a truck parked apart from the others. "Meet your new rig." The 18-wheeler was not flashy, but it was clearly well maintained. Recent model, good tires, the kind of truck that would blend into highway traffic without attracting a second glance. "We have modified the cargo space," Moretti explained as they walked around the vehicle. "Hidden compartments that will not show on standard inspections. The visible cargo is legitimate medical supplies, fully documented. What you will actually be carrying is something else entirely." Marcus waited for details. "They did not come. You do not need to know what is in those compartments. What you need to know is the route, the timing, and the contacts who will receive the delivery." Moretti handed him a folder. "Everything is in here. Study it, memorize it, then destroy it." For the rest of the day, Marcus learned the operation. Routes, alternate routes, checkpoints to avoid, rest stops where allies would be waiting. He memorized faces from photographs, names he would never speak aloud, procedures for every possible emergency. Through it all, he noticed that the Moretti operation was not the chaotic criminal enterprise he had imagined. It ran with the precision of a military operation or a legitimate corporation. Everyone had a role. Everyone knew their place. And at the center of it all was Vincent Moretti, calm and controlled, a man who had built something vast and managed it with cold intelligence. By evening, Marcus's head was spinning with information. He sat in a small break room, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold, when Lucia appeared again. "You should rest," she said, taking a seat across from him. "Tomorrow will be difficult." Marcus rubbed his eyes. "Can I ask you something?" Lucia nodded. "How long have you worked here?" 11 years. She said it without hesitation, without pride or shame. "Mr. Moretti took me in when I had nowhere else to go. He gave me work, stability, a place where my children could grow up safe." "Children?" "2 daughters." Lucia smiled, and the expression transformed her face. "Maria is 16. Sophia is 12. They attend private school in the city, but they spend summers here on the estate." Marcus thought of Emily. Do they know what he does? They know that life is complicated, that good and bad are not always clearly divided, that sometimes the people who protect you are not the people society would call heroes. Lucia met his eyes. They know that Mr. Moretti has rules. He does not deal with certain products despite what others in his position might do. He does not harm innocents, and he has never in 11 years broken a promise to me. Marcus sat with that information, turning it over in his mind. It did not make Vincent Moretti a good man, but it made him something more complex than a simple villain. That night, Marcus called his daughter. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, voice cautious. "Hello? Emily? It is Dad." A pause, longer than it should have been. "Hi, Dad." The words that followed were awkward, halting. He asked about school. She gave one-word answers. He asked about her mother. She said fine. He asked if she was okay, and the silence that followed told him everything. "I am doing something," Marcus said finally, "something that might change things for both of us." Another pause. "What kind of something?" "I cannot explain right now, but I want you to know that everything I am doing, every risk I am taking, is for you, to give you a better future, to be the father I should have been. Dad," Emily's voice cracked just slightly. "You do not have to be a hero, you just have to be there." The words hit Marcus like a truck. Simple, honest, everything he had failed to understand. "I know, baby girl, I know, and I promise you, when this is over, I will be there, really there." He could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Finally, she spoke. "Okay, Dad, I will hold you to that. After she hung up, Marcus sat in the darkness of his borrowed room and made a vow, not to Vincent Moretti, not to the organization he was about to serve, but to the girl whose voice still echoed in his ears. He would survive this, he would come out the other side, and he would be there. The next morning, Marcus climbed into the truck and started the engine. The route was memorized. The contacts were memorized. The procedures were memorized. Everything was in place. Moretti appeared at his window, that calculating intelligence visible behind his calm expression. "Remember, Marcus, you are invisible until you are not. The moment you attract attention, everything changes." He paused. "But if you do your job correctly, no one will ever know you were involved. You will simply be another driver, hauling another load, disappearing into the traffic." Marcus nodded. "And if something goes wrong, then you call this number." Moretti handed him a phone. "One call. Day or night, we will find you." The gate swung open before him. The road stretched out like a promise or a threat. Marcus put the truck in gear and drove into the morning light. For the first hour, nothing happened. Marcus followed the route exactly as planned, keeping his speed steady, his mirrors clear, his mind focused. The truck handled well, responsive and smooth, and the traffic was light. He passed through small towns that were just waking up, past farms and forests and stretches of nothing. America unfolding before him like it had countless times before. But this time everything felt different, sharper, more real. By midday he reached the first checkpoint, a rest stop outside Nashville, where a man in a mechanic's uniform approached his truck with a casual wave. "Engine trouble?" "Just checking the oil," Marcus replied, the code phrase feeling strange on his tongue. The mechanic nodded and gestured for Marcus to pop the hood. For the next 10 minutes they went through the motions of a routine maintenance check, while the mechanic actually inspected the hidden compartments, ensuring everything was secure. "All good," the mechanic finally said. "Next stop is 200 miles. Contact there will be wearing a red baseball cap." Marcus thanked him and pulled back onto the highway. The afternoon passed without incident. Marcus stopped for fuel, for food, for brief stretches where he walked around the truck to keep his legs from cramping. Each time he scanned his surroundings, looking for anything out of place, any sign that Ferrara's people had found him. Nothing. By nightfall, he had covered nearly 400 miles. The second checkpoint came and went smoothly, another coded exchange, another confirmation that the cargo was intact. Marcus began to allow himself a small measure of hope. Maybe this would be easy after all. But somewhere outside of Louisville, the hope evaporated. He noticed the car first, a black sedan that had appeared behind him about 10 miles back and had not passed, had not turned off, had not varied its distance, just sitting there in his mirrors, constant as a shadow. Marcus kept his speed steady, his hands relaxed on the wheel. Could be nothing. Could be a coincidence. Could be someone driving the same direction for completely innocent reasons. Then a second car appeared. Same model, same color, same deliberate positioning. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Pull off at mile marker 174. We will handle this." Marcus glanced at the mile markers flashing past. 172, 173. The exit for mile marker 174 was a narrow road leading into what looked like industrial wasteland. Abandoned warehouses, empty lots. The kind of place where things happened that no one would witness. Marcus made his decision. He took the exit. The black sedans followed. The road twisted through the industrial zone, past rusting equipment and collapsing structures. Marcus's headlights cut through darkness that seemed to swallow everything beyond their reach. Then ahead he saw them, 2 SUVs blocking the road, men standing in front of them, weapons visible even at this distance. Marcus hit the brakes. Behind him the black sedans were closing fast. Trapped. He sat there for a moment, engine idling, mind racing through options. None of them were good. Then the phone buzzed again. "Stay in the truck, trust me." Marcus watched as the men from the SUVs began walking toward him. 5 of them, moving with the confidence of predators who had cornered their prey. The first explosion came from somewhere to his right. A warehouse wall erupted in flame and debris, sending the approaching men diving for cover. The second explosion took out the lead black sedan behind him. Then the night came alive with gunfire. Marcus ducked below the dashboard, heart hammering as the battle raged around him. Through the chaos, he caught glimpses of figures moving through the darkness. Moretti's people. They had been waiting, watching, ready to intervene the moment trouble appeared. The firefight lasted less than 5 minutes. When the sounds finally faded, Marcus raised his head to find a man standing at his window. One of Moretti's soldiers, smoke still rising from the weapon in his hands. "You okay?" Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. "Follow us, new route from here." The rest of the night was a blur. New roads, new checkpoints, new contacts who appeared out of the darkness to guide him forward. By dawn, Marcus had crossed into Ohio, and the worst seemed to be behind him. He stopped at a truck stop to refuel and found his hands were still shaking. Standing in the cold morning air, watching the sun rise over an America that suddenly felt both familiar and completely foreign, Marcus thought about what he had witnessed, the violence, the precision, the way Moretti's people had appeared exactly when needed, had fought and possibly died to protect a cargo and a driver they barely knew. This was the world he had entered, a world where loyalty was measured in actions, not words, where protection came with a price, but also with a promise. His phone buzzed. A text from Moretti himself. "Well done. The hardest part is over." Marcus stared at the words. The hardest part is over. He hoped that was true, but something told him the journey was just beginning. Chapter 3. The final stretch of the drive took Marcus through Pennsylvania, past rolling hills and small towns that seemed frozen in another era. He thought about his daughter as he drove, about the promise he had made her, about the future that was suddenly within reach. 200 miles from his destination, the phone rang. Change of plans. Moretti's voice was calm but urgent. "Do not go to the original address. New location is being sent to your phone now. What happened?" Ferrara made a move. "We intercepted his people, but the original site is compromised. The new location is secure." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "And the cargo? More valuable than ever, which means you are more valuable than ever." He paused. "The new site is a residential address. You will be met by a woman named Catherine. She will guide you from there." A residential address. That meant civilians. That meant danger spreading beyond the professionals who had chosen this life. Marcus. Moretti seemed to read his thoughts. "Catherine is not an innocent bystander. She is one of my most trusted people. You can rely on her completely." The new address led to a farmhouse outside a small town in upstate New York. Rolling fields, old trees, the kind of place that postcards were made of. Marcus pulled his truck down a long gravel driveway as the afternoon sun cast everything in gold. A woman emerged from the house as he parked, tall, red-haired, with the kind of beauty that seemed almost too perfect to be real. She walked toward him with the confident stride of someone who knew exactly who she was and what she was capable of. Marcus Cole. Her voice was warm but measured. "I am Catherine. Welcome to my home." The unloading took less than an hour. Men appeared from somewhere, efficient and silent, transferring the hidden cargo to vehicles that would carry it to its final destination. Marcus watched from the porch, accepting the coffee Catherine had offered, feeling the exhaustion of the past days finally catching up with him. "You did well," Catherine said, joining him. "Moretti speaks highly of you. We only met 2 days ago," she smiled. "Vincent forms opinions quickly. It is one of his gifts, and one of his dangers." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. The farmhouse was peaceful, almost impossibly so, given what had just happened there. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus finally said. Catherine nodded. "Why do you do this? You could be anywhere, doing anything. Why this life?" Catherine was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of history. "Because Vincent saved my life. Not metaphorically, literally." She turned to face Marcus. "I was 17 when we met, running from a situation that would have destroyed me. He found me, protected me, gave me a chance to become something more than a victim." She paused. "This life is not perfect. It is not even good by most standards. But it is mine, and I owe it to a man who saw my potential when I could not see it myself." Marcus thought about his own situation. The debt, the failure, the daughter he had let down, and now the strange path that had led him here, to this farmhouse, to this woman, to this moment. "He is giving me the same chance," he said quietly. Catherine nodded. "And what will you do with it?" The question hung in the air as the last light faded from the sky. Marcus stayed at the farmhouse that night. A guest room had been prepared, simple but comfortable, and Catherine insisted he rest before making the drive back. But sleep did not come easily. He lay in the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the countryside, thinking about everything that had happened. The container, Moretti, the ambush outside Louisville, the trust that had been extended to him, inexplicably, impossibly, and he thought about Emily. He pulled out his phone and dialed her number before he could talk himself out of it. "Dad?" Her voice was sleepy, confused. "It is almost midnight." "I know, baby. I am sorry. I just wanted to hear your voice." A pause. "Are you okay?" "I am." Marcus felt tears threatening and forced them back. "I am better than okay. I did something today, something hard. And I survived it, and now everything is going to change for us. For both of us. Dad, you are scaring me. Do not be scared. Just believe me when I tell you that I am going to keep my promise. I am going to be there. Really there. Starting now." The silence on the other end of the line was different this time. Less guarded, more hopeful. "Okay, Dad." She paused. "I believe you." After they hung up, Marcus lay in the darkness and felt something shift inside him. A wall that had been crumbling for years finally gave way, and in its place was something new. Purpose, hope, the faint beginning of redemption. In that moment, Marcus Cole understood that his life would never be the same. Not because of the money he would earn, or the debts that would be erased, or the opportunities that would open, but because he had finally stopped running from himself. If you are feeling something right now, if this moment touched you, leave a comment with this sentence: "A second chance is worth any risk." I want to know that there are people out there who believe in redemption. Chapter 4. The drive back to the Moretti estate took 2 days. Marcus could have done it faster, but something made him take his time. Stopping at diners he had passed 100 times but never entered. Walking through small towns, breathing air that somehow tasted different now. He was processing, integrating, becoming someone new. When he finally pulled through the iron gates, the estate looked different in daylight. Less imposing, more like a home. Moretti was waiting for him in the same study where they had first spoken. But the dynamic had shifted. Where before Marcus had been a stranger, a liability, now something approaching respect flickered in those cold grey eyes. "You surprised me, Marcus Cole." Marcus sat in the same leather chair, feeling more comfortable this time. "I surprised myself." Moretti smiled, a genuine expression that softened his features. "The cargo has reached its destination. My contacts are satisfied, and Ferrara has received a message he will not soon forget." He paused. "You have fulfilled your end of our agreement. Your debts are being erased as we speak. A trust fund has been established for your daughter's education. You are free to leave." Marcus nodded. He had expected to feel relieved. Instead, he felt something closer to uncertainty. "What if I do not want to leave?" Moretti raised an eyebrow. "That was not part of our agreement." "No, it was not." Marcus leaned forward. "But what I experienced out there, the precision, the loyalty, the way your people protected me without hesitation, I have never been part of something like that." He paused. "I spent 18 years driving other people's cargo, living other people's lives. For the first time, I feel like I am doing something that matters." Moretti studied him for a long moment. "What you are suggesting would change everything." "Marcus, this life does not allow for half measures. You are either in completely or you are not in at all. I understand, do you?" Moretti stood and walked to the window, looking out at the grounds. "I have built this organization over 30 years. It has cost me things you cannot imagine. Relationships, peace of mind, any hope of a normal existence." He turned back to face Marcus. "If you stay, those costs become yours as well." Marcus thought of Emily, of the promise he had made her, of the father he wanted to become. "I am not looking for a normal existence. I am looking for a purpose, and I think I have found one." The silence stretched between them. Then Moretti nodded slowly. "Very well, Marcus Cole." He extended his hand. "Welcome to the family." They shook, and Marcus felt the weight of the commitment settle onto his shoulders. Heavy, terrifying, and somehow exactly right. The weeks that followed were intense. Marcus learned the workings of the Moretti organization from the inside out. The supply chains, the territories, the alliances and enmities that defined the landscape of American organized activity. He discovered that Moretti had been honest about his rules. There were certain businesses the organization refused to enter, certain lines that were never crossed. It did not make them legitimate, but it made them something more nuanced than simple criminals. And he learned about Ferrara. Salvatore Ferrara controlled the northeastern distribution network, and his ambition had grown beyond containment. The attack on the road had been just one battle in an ongoing conflict that threatened to escalate into full-scale warfare. "He wants everything," Moretti explained during one of their sessions. "Not just territory, not just profit. He wants to become the only power left standing." "What are you going to do about it?" Moretti's expression hardened. "Whatever is necessary." Marcus found his place in the organization gradually. His driving skills made him invaluable for sensitive transport operations. His military background gave him an understanding of logistics and strategy that complemented Moretti's existing team, and his outsider perspective, his ability to see problems without decades of assumption, proved surprisingly useful. But his greatest contribution was something less tangible. "You change the room when you enter it," Catherine told him one evening as they shared dinner at the farmhouse. "People trust you instinctively. It is rare." Marcus shrugged. "I just try to be honest." "That is exactly what I mean." Catherine smiled. "Honesty is the rarest currency in our world, and you spend it freely." The comment stayed with him as he drove back to the estate that night. Honesty. In a world built on secrets and deception, he had somehow become valuable by being exactly who he was. It was strange, it was ironic, and it was beginning to feel like destiny. 1 month after his first delivery, Marcus received permission to visit his daughter. He drove to Columbus in a rental car, wearing clothes he had bought specifically for the occasion. Nothing flashy, just clean jeans, a pressed shirt, the appearance of a man who was getting his life together. Emily was waiting on the porch of her mother's house. She had grown in the months since he had seen her, taller, older, but her eyes were the same, skeptical and hopeful in equal measure. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, baby girl." They stood there for a moment, the distance between them measured in more than feet. Then Emily stepped forward and hugged him, and Marcus felt something inside him break and rebuild simultaneously. They spent the afternoon together, a walk in the park, ice cream at a shop she remembered from her childhood, a conversation that started awkward and gradually deepened into something real. "You seem different," Emily finally said, as they sat on a bench watching the sunset. "I feel different. What changed?" Marcus considered the question. He could not tell her everything, would probably never be able to tell her everything, but he could tell her the truth, filtered through whatever he could safely share. "I found a purpose." He met her eyes. "For years, I was just surviving, going through the motions, failing at everything that mattered because I did not believe I deserved to succeed." He paused. "Something happened that changed that, made me realize I had potential I had never used." Emily was quiet for a long moment. "Does this have to do with that dangerous thing you mentioned on the phone?" "Yes." "Are you safe?" Marcus thought about the attack outside Louisville, the gunfire, the close calls that had happened since. "As safe as I can be." Emily nodded slowly. "I do not need you to be safe, Dad. I need you to be present. Whatever you are doing, whoever you are becoming, just promise me you will not disappear again." Marcus reached out and took her hand. "I promise." When he left Columbus that night, something fundamental had shifted. The distance between him and his daughter had not disappeared, but it had narrowed, and for the first time in years, Marcus believed it could continue to narrow. He was building a bridge, one conversation at a time. Chapter 5. The conflict with Ferrara came to a head 3 months after Marcus's first delivery. Intelligence suggested that Ferrara was planning a major move, an assault on one of Moretti's key distribution centers that would cripple operations across 3 states. The information came from a source inside Ferrara's organization, someone who had been cultivated for years, who had finally provided actionable details. "It is a trap," Marcus said during the strategy session, surprising himself with his certainty. Moretti looked at him with interest. "Explain." Marcus pointed to the map spread across the table. "This distribution center is important, but not critical. We could survive losing it. Ferrara knows that." He paused. "But if we commit resources to defending it, we leave other positions vulnerable. The real target is not this location. It is somewhere else." "Where?" Marcus traced the likely movements on the map. "Here, your processing facility in New Jersey. It is the heart of everything. If Ferrara takes it, he does not just hurt you, he cripples you." The room was silent. Moretti's senior advisors exchanged glances, some skeptical, others considering. Catherine spoke first. He might be right. The intelligence on this attack was too easy to obtain, almost as if someone wanted us to find it. Moretti studied the map. "If Marcus is right and we focus on New Jersey, we leave the distribution center undefended. If he is wrong, we lose both." "Then we do not choose," Marcus said. "We prepare for both. Split our forces intelligently. Defend the distribution center with enough presence to deter, and position the bulk of our strength at the processing facility." Another long silence. Then Moretti nodded. "Do it." The night of the expected attack was tense. Marcus found himself positioned with a team near the New Jersey facility, watching the darkness for any sign of movement. Hours passed without incident. Then, close to midnight, his radio crackled. Movement at the distribution center. Small force. Probing attack. Minutes later, another report. Vehicles approaching the processing facility. This is it. What followed was carefully controlled chaos. Ferrara had indeed split his forces, expecting Moretti to concentrate entirely on the distribution center. Instead, he found his main assault force meeting fierce resistance at the processing facility, while his diversion team discovered more defenders than anticipated. Marcus watched from his position as Moretti's people executed the defense plan with precision. The attackers, caught off guard, fell back in disorder. By dawn, it was clear that Ferrara's gamble had failed catastrophically. The aftermath was both victory and escalation. "He will not stop," Moretti said, as they surveyed the damage at the processing facility. "This loss will make him desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. What are our options?" Moretti was quiet for a long moment. "We can continue to defend. Play this game of attrition until one of us runs out of resources or resolve." He paused. "Or we can end it." "End it how?" Moretti's eyes met his, and in them Marcus saw something he had not seen before. Weariness, not physical exhaustion, but the bone-deep fatigue of a man who had been fighting for decades. Ferrara has family in Italy, parents, siblings, nieces and nephews who know nothing about his business here. He paused. "If I were truly ruthless, I would use them as leverage, force him to back down by threatening the people he loves. But you will not do that." Moretti shook his head slowly. "No, that is a line I will not cross. It would make me no different from the men I have spent my life fighting against." He straightened. "So we find another way, a way that ends this conflict without destroying what makes us different from our enemies." Marcus thought about the code he had discovered at the heart of the Moretti organization, the rules, the limits, the stubborn insistence on maintaining some boundary between necessary business and unnecessary cruelty. "Maybe that is why I stayed," he said quietly. Moretti looked at him. "Because you proved that a different way was possible. That power does not have to mean losing yourself completely." The older man was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded, and something passed between them. Recognition, respect, the foundation of something that might, in time, become genuine friendship. "Find me that different way, Marcus Cole. Help me end this without becoming the monster Ferrara believes I am." Marcus accepted the challenge without hesitation. The solution came from an unexpected direction. Marcus had maintained contact with a former army buddy who now worked federal law enforcement. They had served together, saved each other's lives, and maintained the kind of bond that transcended career choices. During a carefully arranged meeting, Marcus shared certain information about Ferrara's operation. Not everything, nothing that would expose Moretti's organization, but enough to direct federal attention toward specific illegal activities that even rival criminals found distasteful. 3 weeks later, Salvatore Ferrara was arrested on charges unrelated to his conflict with Moretti. Evidence emerged of connections to foreign organizations, of activities that violated even the unwritten rules of the criminal world. His empire crumbled almost overnight. Moretti learned of the arrest from Marcus himself. "You did this," the older man said, more statement than question. "I found a different way, like you asked." Moretti was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, he smiled. "You continue to surprise me, Marcus Cole." The aftermath of Ferrara's fall reshaped the landscape of the Moretti organization. Former rivals sought alliances. Territories that had been contested for years stabilized, and Marcus found himself elevated to a position he had never sought but somehow earned. He became Moretti's primary advisor for strategic operations. His outsider perspective, his ability to find unconventional solutions, his fundamental honesty, all proved invaluable in navigating the new reality. But more than professional advancement, Marcus found something he had not expected: family. Lucia and her daughters adopted him as a kind of uncle figure, inviting him to dinners, holidays, the ordinary moments that make up a life. Catherine became a confidant, someone who understood the unique pressures of their world and could offer perspective without judgment. And Moretti himself evolved from employer to mentor to something approaching a father figure. It was strange. It was complicated. It was nothing like the life Marcus had imagined for himself, and it was exactly where he belonged. Chapter 6. 2 years after that rain-soaked night at the rest area, Marcus Cole stood in the garden of the Moretti estate, watching his daughter laugh with Lucia's girls. Emily had graduated high school with honors. The trust fund had paid for her first year at Columbia, where she was studying business with the kind of focus Marcus had never possessed at her age. She visited the estate regularly now, had met the people who had become Marcus's second family, had gradually come to understand that the world was more complex than simple categories of good and bad. She still did not know everything, probably never would, but she knew her father, really knew him, and that was enough. Moretti approached, moving more slowly than he used to. The years had caught up with him, though his mind remained as sharp as ever. "She looks like you," the older man said, watching Emily. "She is better than me, better than I ever could have been, because you gave her the chance to be." Moretti paused. "That is what legacy means, Marcus. Not the empire you build, but the people you help become better than yourself." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the young women talk and laugh, watching the sun move across a sky that seemed impossibly blue. "I am transferring control of the northeastern operations to you," Moretti said finally. Marcus turned to face him. "What? I am not retiring." Moretti smiled slightly. "Men like me do not retire, but I am delegating, and there is no one I trust more to carry forward what we have built." He paused. "The operation has changed under your influence, Marcus. We have moved away from certain businesses toward others. We have become something closer to legitimate with each passing year. I want that process to continue." Marcus thought about the journey that had led him here, the desperate decision to open that container, the choice to follow Moretti into the darkness, the countless smaller choices since then, each one building toward this moment. "I will not betray your trust. I know." Moretti's eyes held the weight of decades. "That is why you are the only person I would ask." The ceremony, if it could be called that, was private. Just Moretti, Marcus, and the senior members of the organization gathered in the study where everything had begun. Moretti spoke about loyalty and legacy, about the difference between power and purpose. He spoke about Marcus's contributions, the lives saved, the conflicts resolved, the bridges built between their world and the legitimate one. And then he asked Marcus to speak. Marcus stood before the assembled group. These men and women who had become his family, and thought about what to say. "2 years ago I was nobody, a failing truck driver with nothing but debt and regret. I made a decision that should have ended my life, and instead it began something new." He paused. "I do not stand here because I am special. I stand here because someone saw potential in me that I could not see in myself, because a family accepted me when I had no right to expect acceptance, because I was given a second chance and chose to use it well." He looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. "I know what we are, I know what history has made us, but I also know what we can become, and I promise you, as I promised Vincent Moretti 2 years ago, that I will spend every day working toward that better version of ourselves, not because we have to, but because we can." The applause that followed was genuine. The handshakes were firm, and when it was over, when the others had dispersed, Marcus found himself alone in the study, with the weight of responsibility and the lightness of purpose. Emily found him there an hour later. "Dad?" She stood in the doorway, looking at him with eyes that saw everything. "Are you okay?" Marcus smiled. "I am better than okay. Baby girl, I am exactly where I am supposed to be." She crossed the room and hugged him, and in that embrace Marcus felt the completion of a journey he had not known he was taking. From desperate driver to trusted leader, from absent father to present parent, from a man running from himself to a man who had finally come home. The story could have ended there. In many ways it did. But life continues beyond the moments we think are endings. Marcus led the northeastern operations for 7 more years. Under his guidance, the organization transformed gradually but completely, moving from shadow businesses to legitimate enterprises, from feared to respected, from criminal to corporate. Moretti lived to see the transition, passing peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82, surrounded by the family he had built rather than born. Emily graduated from Columbia and joined the organization's legal team, helping to navigate the complex transition to legitimacy. She married a man who knew exactly what her family history contained and loved her anyway. Marcus walked her down the aisle on a spring afternoon, tears streaming down his face, prouder than he had ever been of anything in his life. And Lucia's daughters, Maria and Sophia, grew up to lead parts of the organization themselves, carrying forward the legacy that had been passed to them. Family, purpose, redemption, the 3 pillars that Marcus had discovered in the darkness of that rain-soaked night. Years later, when people asked him about his story, Marcus always began the same way. A truck driver stole a Mafia load, One decision changed his life forever. But the real story was not about the decision. It was about what came after. It was about the second chance he chose to take, the family he chose to build, the person he chose to become. And it all started with a single moment of desperation that became, against all odds, the beginning of everything good. If you have watched this far, it is because you connected with this story. Leave a comment saying I watched until the end so I can get to know you and see who really enjoys the stories here on the channel. And if this story touched you, if it made you believe that second chances are possible, then hit that subscribe button. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it is never too late to change, because the greatest stories are the ones that remind us who we can become. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And remember, every ending is just another beginning.